What are your thoughts about these about this? This you did
One,
see.
I did. I have a lot of thoughts, but one sort of question for you, Paul. Under temple, would you include things like museums, concert halls, theaters, those kinds of places?
I Why do we go? I think the question is, why do we go there? And if we go there for entertainment, if it's peripheral and it's a distraction, I think it's not um it's not a temple. But if I see everybody, if there were a theater and there were a line of people attired, waiting long hours, attired in odd garments, so that they can participate as a community in the seeing of the thing, the it's there's a liturgy around certain cultural icons, and I I mean Marvel or Star Wars or what have you, of that variety. I think those sorts of things um, have that, and I think within a certain circle, like uh, do we go to like a Puccini, like the opera? Do we go there because we find we are worshiping in the opera some sort of aesthetic ideal? Then I think maybe it can take that on in that orienting function. Um, or do we do it? Yeah, or do we do it because, oh yeah, I'm struggling on both sides. I think there are definitely people who are religious about their opera. Not many, but but there is that group. But I think the fanaticism around, or I'll say enthusiasm, um, just because the etymology is just so beautiful there. The enthusiasm around Star Wars or Marvel, uh, where you have a rich mythos, you have a participation in that mythos, you have a community surrounding that which you engage with. It has many real, and it's orienting. Like, these are my heroes. I am taking on this mythos and I want to participate in that mythos. I think there's a religious thing there. I'm making it much more low culture than you were, Rod, but how do you feel about that answer?
Well, I have art museums in mind in particular.
Oh, well, sorry, I went somewhere else. Go.
No. I was general in my question. I asked museums and concert halls. Some of these beautiful old theaters, for example, that have been lovingly restored at great expense, and um, but art museums in particular. I remember both my wife and I love going to art museums, and I've basically my entire adult life, whenever I would travel to a new city on business or whatever, I'd make a point to carve out a couple hours to just visit their local art museums. So I've been doing it for a very long time. And so I have I've watched the way people do art museums. And I remember it was funny because one of my last visit to New York, I went to the Met and Metropolitan Art Museum, and this is probably 18 months ago or so, not too long ago, but long after all of the COVID things had long passed, and they're still wearing their masks. And there's still a very liturgical way in which you approach a piece of art. there's all the I'm just watching this partly with all the stuff that I've picked up around here. I'm just watching this as kind of, an amateur anthropologist going, this is quite religious actually. And you can almost tell by the way the staff moves that they're almost moving like they're sacred space, right? And their posture, and they all seemed a little angry to me, frankly, but that's another point. But
You never find that in church.
that was what was informing my question, because I had that specific experience, and then I kind of broadened the aperture to think of these kind of sacred spaces that are you walk into one of these beautiful old theaters, and your gaze casts upward, and you feel kind of the awe of the beauty of the space, and I don't know. That's why I thought it might fit the category that you're describing.
Are they worshiping, in your opinion?
That would derail. I actually have all kinds of thoughts about this. The answer would be something like the arts will save us. Um, and I always ask my artist friends, like, how many artists do you know? Are any of them gonna save us? Um, but in that world, there is a kind of reverence for the creative act, right? And of course, they have their saints too. All of the dead artists.
They're gods.
Well, and then of course they've been dethroned with the whole modern thing. So, it, but I would say that yeah, they have something like a belief that we and I have to say, by the way, if we get to this, I've been doing a fair amount of institution building in my life, right? I told you I avoided them all, but that's mostly because I just would rather just start something new than um, and so I've spent a lot of time in the world of the arts and creatives and I am sympathetic to the sensibility that there is something about beauty that you know at least holds out the potential for something like a highest good, right? And I do think that that's at the heart of that. But of course, like so many other things, it's been badly corrupted, right? So it's complicated. I could say a lot more, but I don't want to derail the sort of the core point that we're trying to chew on here.
Well,
I'm trying to pull something up. Just a sec. Go for it, Paul.
I don't think you're derailing it at all, because I like where Paul began with this, because okay, we've got this meta crisis and we feel instability. AI is making us nervous right now. And so the way to address this is universal basic income. And of course, when I hear it, I think about the people that I know who are already on selective basic income in the United States, like disability or Social Security. And I immediately see the deficiencies. And the deficiencies have everything to do with this broadening that Paul gave us with universal basic institutions. Because if you think money can solve everything, I don't think you've seen anything in this world, because I've seen very wealthy people who are impoverished, and I've seen very poor people who can live very rich lives. Now, what's interesting is that the category that you zeroed into, Rod, and the way you zeroed into it has everything to do with the conversation of the last 500 years with respect to, well, what is the church for? I was recently, for the first time, in the great state of Alabama, and I conducted a wedding for a young couple that had been together a number of years and decided, partly due to the influence of this little corner and the estuary movement, decided to, in fact, participate in the institution of marriage. And I was very happy to be able to participate and facilitate that process. While I was down in Alabama, for the first time in my life, I attended the ballet. And the shock that I had in attending the ballet was that it was being hosted in a PCA, that's Presbyterian Church of America. This is a conservative, off, offshoot of the PCUSA, the old main line. I participated in it, and it was a remarkable. It was in this massive sanctuary on this massive stage. All of the young women and young men, way, way more young women than young men participating in this ballet. All of them were um, students at the Christian school, and it was a phenomenal performance. And I thought it gave me an insight because I grew up on the coast and now I live on the other coast. And I thought if I were to go to the ballet in the New York metropolitan area, I would see a fine ballet. I probably never went to one because it would cost a lot of money and we didn't have a lot of money. Ballet wasn't on my parents' radar either. But there is a connection here. And so I think, Rod, your instincts are correct, but you're exactly right that that is a very big, very long conversation that has everything to do with the last 500 years. Because the truth is, when I went to Italy a couple summers ago and I went into church after church after church, what did I look at? I didn't go there to hear a sermon. I looked at Michelangelo and I looked at the masters. But when I go to Southern California, to the Getty, which I love doing, why does the Getty look like it does, and why does the Louvre look like it does? There's a world going on here, Rod, and I think your instincts are pointing
Well,
your nose in the right way.
and the Getty, famously more impressive architecture than the collection itself. Getty had a lot of money, but not necessarily the best taste in art. Maybe that's improved over time. But even the Guggenheim in New York. I mean, you walk into the Guggenheim, it's got this beautiful central lobby with this kind of spiraling hallways that go up to each level. Right? It's an absolutely gorgeous building. Right?
But the Getty architecturally is not the Vatican.
No, but it's high design, right? In
Right.
each case, every time somebody builds a new art museum, we keep ratcheting up the expectation that the building itself is somehow going to be this, well, sacred space, basically. In many cases, the collection is not that impressive, but the building, wow, right?
But the Vatican has both.
Yes, no, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And the Louvre, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Many of those old art museums are they're stunningly beautiful, and they have, beautiful, beautiful historic collections. I,
Paul, can I share real quick? Share screen.
Oh yeah.
I don't have permissions. But go continue, Rod. Sorry.
Um,
Well, no, go ahead, share. Like, this is your conversation. I have a lot of things I could say, but I want to serve your conversation.
I think here we go. So I just pulled this off of Google Maps. This is a church where I was involved in the art design. This is at ASC at Arizona State. This is the Newman Center. So this is designed for students, and it was all this art was done in the last 10 years.
It's beautiful, Paul. Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's
complete with Christmas trees.
Yeah, and I think this was taken 22 days ago. So I think I think people can disagree on like the styles, but I think the point the church and art have this long relationship. And if you look at the architecture in Phoenix through the last 50 years, this is sort of a new move where we're going to go with this ornate, large sort of. I'm going to butcher all the styling stuff, but going with this sort of traditional, more of a traditional feel in the design, in the art, and the building is not it's not a stone building, it's a modern construction building, but I think the people want this, they're looking for an artistic expression in their liturgy, and it's bringing them to worship. So how do people interact with a space like this? Like I've prayed a lot in this church, so I know, like, you visually look at the image, there's all sorts of symbolism in it, and it becomes a focus for reflection upon a certain mystery, like the central image, the kingship of Christ. It's going to be a central image. So if I'm looking at a Monet, there's going to be a similar contemplative process where I am I am trying to have a conversation with the visualization that allows me to transcend my own imagination and enter into the cultural language, the artist's language, which is being portrayed. And so I I think the whole purpose here of sharing is the church is an art museum.
Well, you're proud of your work. You should be proud of that. It's a beautiful space.
I I am not going to overstate my participation other than showing up to committee meetings and talking about things I like. But and there's I'm gonna mess up the artist's name too. So there's but the focus. So I think people to be oriented, want institutions that allow them to transcend. And I think the art museum can do that. I think Marvel movies are trying to do that. And I know the church is doing that since for me and other people I know. Um, so, but what is there's a communal element to the church which allows it to continue. Unfortunately, the Marvel movies have gotten worse and the fans have fallen off, and there isn't the body to sort of sustain that. And the art world has, I mean, these corporate institutional bodies which are sustaining it. So maybe there's a communal aspect to that, but is yeah, so I guess the audit would be what's orienting myself. Where do I go to try to transcend my day to day and participate in something bigger than myself? And is that like living stones, or is that my church that is beautifully painted in a very symbol rich liturgical setting, or is it the Guggenheim? I think my thought is, all right, we need to each understand where we are getting that transcendent. And I would boldly make the claim that not all of these are created equal. I think the incentives of the guy making Marvel is not to create a beautiful artistic space so that people can engage themselves and create meaning and create purpose in their life. People are doing that, but mostly people are trying to cash in on, oh, I can make a lot of money doing this. And so Paul, you can disagree with, I think
I think
there's a corruption.
I've seen plenty of artists who, certainly say, why not both? I think most
There are
good
churches too,
artists,
but
churches too, most good
yeah.
artists, they don't get into art for the money. They get into art for this aspect. And it's also true that, I mean, we have this taxonomy here,
Yeah.
but I think about Kuiper's sphere of sovereignty, but all of these things bleed because marriage, for example, as a vessel, as a container, has its aspect that participates in the economic, that participates in the academic, that participates in the forum, that has even a market element to it. And so, on one hand, we certainly have a taxonomy, but it's helpful to reminder that vessels in the wild are multifaceted things, and certainly temples, museums, the arts, these are all multi-aspectual realities, because just about everything in our world that is real is multi-aspectual. They have many aspects, and they participate at many different levels.